So when speaking to people who call themselves UFO researchers and you ask them for cases that are believable, credible, unsolved, and potentially real, often they put forward the Phoenix Lights incident. Okay, if you don't know what that was, the Phoenix Lights were a series of UFO sightings happening over Arizona, a northern state of Mexico, and Nevada in 1997, all in one day in 1997. Now, thousands of people on that day claim to have witnessed a giant V-shaped object silently and slowly hovering over those states, over residential areas. Again, thousands of people witnessed it, called the police, tried to get information on what that is. Here's a little screenshot or photo probably of a headline that USA Today ran at the time. Skies, phone lines light up areas, unidentified for 106 minutes. On March 13th, people saw something like this V-shaped object flying over Arizona. UFOs, question mark? The only thing certain is that it still haunts them. Really nice, objective reporting here from USA Today. I love it. Not opinionated or dramatizing at all. Now, the actual part that makes the Phoenix Lights incident cool is that the governor of Arizona at the time, Fife Symington, held a press conference, I think a day or two after this incident happened, and loads of people were very upset, right? They were like, we need an explanation. What happened? So Governor Fife Symington came out and he brought into this conference room like a guy with a rubber alien mask, and he made fun of it, he ridiculed it and said, yeah, it's nothing, well, we're moving on. Basically trying to marginalize what happened, and it kind of worked. It did go away, people stopped talking about it, but nobody really got an explanation, right? So, but then a few years later, that same guy, Fife Symington, came out and said, actually, guys, at the time, I did witness the incident. I did see everything, and he described in his own words the object as otherworldly, okay? So that's cool, because here you have a governor. He was actually in the military before. I think he was a pilot himself. And even he said, like, that was an otherworldly thing. That was nothing that we have. So that lends a little bit more credibility to it. And I think it's fair to say there's thousands of witnesses who all describe a very similar phenomenon in a very similar time frame. Then you have this governor. You have professional eyewitness, loads of them. I think it's fair to say these people have seen something. Okay, there was something in the sky that night. But was it aliens? Okay, because people jump to that conclusion way too fast. Now, this video is called The Phoenix Lights Debunked, and that's what we're going to do. Let me introduce JP Aerospace to you guys. JP Aerospace is a California-based company, not a huge company, but what they do is these guys are working on V-shaped inflatables that ultimately aim to fly up into space, okay? These are so-called lighter-than-air crafts, okay? Because ideally, there's so much gas in those inflatables that it can propel the balloon up, and then they're working on ultimately getting it into space, which then would be a cheaper way of getting items into space and so on. So they're working on that. This is the Ascender 26, and looking at it, I think it becomes pretty clear where we are going. They have been working on this for years. We're going to go into a little bit more detail about this company in a second and their history and how long they've been working on it and whether they have been testing during that time in that area. But look at these images. Okay, I mean, it's pretty clear. And it gets even better, okay, because they've been working on bigger models. Note that this is a person over here. So you get an idea of the size and scale of these inflatables. Here's another guy standing inside of it. It's gigantic, okay? And if you would see, and this is, by the way, this is a float test, okay? They're testing whether the structure floats on its own inside this hangar. And, you know, imagine this thing would fly over your head. And you might say, well, hold on, dude. Okay, it might be one of those inflatables, but why would they fly it over all these residential areas? It makes no sense, right? Well, if you are testing something like this, and obviously, right, we're in Arizona, you have plenty of desert in that area where you might test something like this, right? And if you put it high enough, and maybe there's some wind that you didn't see coming before, and it just carries the structure. Maybe it was connected to a rope, and for whatever reason, the rope disconnected or broke or whatever, and now this huge structure just drifts off in the wind. And if the winds are strong enough, that thing moves wherever it wants, okay? And you're not going to stop it. How are you going to stop a structure of that size moving freely through the sky here? But there's more to this, because in this 2020 interview, early 2020 interview on like some kind of military news site, the War Zone, ironically, with the founder of JP Aerospace, they're even talking about the Phoenix Lights. It's an interesting article. I'll link all the sites down in the description, right? So you can read these articles and interviews on your own. This is particularly technical, right? They're talking about the challenges that they have to overcome as a company to get those aircraft ultimately into space. They're talking about that they've been working on this for a very, very long time. But for the sake of this video, where we're mostly interested in the Phoenix Lights, the part that is interesting is the one down here that says big black triangles. Now, many of the images of JP Aerospace vehicles, both prototype and in development, may look familiar to those aware of incidents of alleged unidentified aircraft over the last few decades. As an aside to our interview with JP Aerospace John Powell, we asked Powell how possible he feels it could be, based on his experience, that the United States Air Force or other military or governmental bodies may be operating black or off-the-books lighter-than-air crafts, which might explain some of those reported sightings. In the 1980s, scores of eyewitnesses claimed to have seen massive, slow-moving V-shaped aircraft floating silently through the night skies above the Hudson Valley in New York State. In the 1997 Phoenix Lights incident, thousands of witnesses throughout Arizona, Nevada, and northern Mexico reported seeing a similarly massive and silent aircraft. Accounts vary, and some claim that there were two separate sets of lights conflated as one incident, but most eyewitness report seeing a giant, silent craft that was either V-shaped or triangular, passing low over the region. And let me derail here for a second, okay? Because they're talking about these two separate incidences that make up the Phoenix Lights. So what really happened is people witnessed this craft, or a craft like that, probably floating over the area. They were shocked, and everyone called the cops and called emergency lines, and they were like, oh my god, what's going on? So the military was like, god damn, we got to do something. So miraculously, 2 hours later, after this incident happened, the first one with the big craft, the military scheduled a rehearsal. We're testing something, okay? So we're going to drop in some flares over the same area, okay? It kind of looks like the aircraft, but that was a rehearsal that was scheduled months in advance. So just dropping a few flares here, and they admitted that actually later on, that they dropped flares about 2 hours after the first original sighting. So that just caused confusion, and my theory is that the military was secretly hoping that they can push this black project that went wrong, that drifted off in the wind, and everyone is shocked, on those flares, and they can just say, yeah, no, we kind of did this test that day with flares, and that's it, and they hoped that it would kind of go away after that, which didn't really happen. That's my theory, that they were hoping for that. JP Aerospace John Powell says that while his company has designed vehicles for the Department of Defense, some of which went to the black world, his company was ultimately not responsible for the Phoenix Lights incident. Here's the quote from this guy from JP Aerospace. Here I must tread a little delicately. We have built several airships and other vehicles for various DoD agencies. None of our programs were classified. However, after completion and delivery, our vehicles entered into programs of which we have no knowledge. We were testing vehicles at the time of the Phoenix Lights incident. However, I can absolutely say that JP Aerospace was not, nor was our equipment, involved. There have been times where our vehicles have been sighted and confused for UFOs or other mysterious things. I have also seen images of great V-shaped objects in the sky that I can say for sure were not mine, but I could note perhaps the tech of a competitor. This is all speculation. Okay, and he's saying quite rightly there, these images are out there, right? These plans are out there for quite some time. Surely someone else would recreate this and hope to land like a big government contract or something like that. What I'm saying is, I'm sure JP Aerospace is not the only company who's doing something like this. Beyond that, they also sold things like that to the military, so they're working on their own versions of it. And I think at this point, looking at all this evidence, it's debunked. You just can't seriously say anymore that the Phoenix Lights were possibly aliens. It just doesn't make any sense. Like the probability of him saying, hey, we tested it during that time, here are images of how it looks, it is literally the same thing. What's more likely? That this thing kind of drifted off, or an accident happened or whatever, and it flies over these residential areas, or aliens coming down from space, flying over Arizona a little bit, and then disappearing. Now you may argue and say, oh, hold on, wait a second. What about the radar tracking? Okay, because people inquired with the military and said, did you see anything on radar? And they were like, no, we saw nothing. Okay, so in regards to that, I can only say, if this was a black project, The military certainly wouldn't say, yeah, that was ours. They would deny it. And ultimately that helped the mythicism of this event enormously, right? That the military just, no, we can't track anything on radar, denying any involvement and all that. That's why a lot of people jump to the aliens conclusion. But keep in mind, the military owes you nothing. Okay, they don't need to tell you anything. They have no responsibility to uncover that this is actually like a black project to residents of the United States. But the thing that upsets me the most, I think, about this whole story is that till this day, because this has been out for a long time, right? You can see the website of this company is probably made in 1997. But this interview with the founder of JP Aerospace is from 2020, right? February 2020. It's fairly recent, but nothing about this is mentioned in the Wikipedia article about the whole incident, okay? And this is just mind-blowing to me because it just shows what a religion this whole UFO movement is, okay? People don't want the evidence. You don't want to have the evidence on the Wikipedia page and a whole article that says, you know what, these things were tested. In fact, they look exactly like this artist's rendition, and there's a high probability that it was one of those. Nah, we keep that out of the Wikipedia article. We're not, I'm not judging Wikipedia or whatever. I mean, ultimately, it's just like users editing it. But I do think like there is an interest of like not putting it out there because it would just ruin the mythicism. And they even have a whole section down here, right, where they talk about explanations. First event. The first event was the V-shaped. It traveled over northern Arizona, blah, blah, blah. Proponents of two separate events propose that the first event still has no provable explanation, but there was some evidence that they were in fact airplanes. And it's like, bro, like just put the line in there. Like copy it, put it in there. Why? I don't know. Maybe I'm implying wrong intent here. Okay, maybe it's just a coincidence and people didn't know about it. Because I Googled, that's also one of the reasons why I made this video. I Googled Phoenix Lights Debunked and I found nothing. And I knew about these V-shaped inflatable aircraft for some time. I've seen this on Reddit or whatever, a year at least back. So for whatever reason, it really seems to have not arrived in the UFO researcher cosmos that this thing is probably very easily explainable. But anyway, guys, this is just my interpretation of all this. If you have a different interpretation, if you think this is all BS what I'm talking, then leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. I'm curious to hear them, and I'm happy to argue with you about stuff, so just share anything. Any thoughts on this down in the comments. Again, all links are in the description. Everything we looked at today. You can also like the video if you enjoyed it. I would appreciate it. It helps the channel out. And while you're down there, there's also a little subscribe button, the bell and all that. Just they make all like neat little animations when you hit them. It's a lot of fun. Just hit them, okay? Just a bit of friendly advice. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching. I see you in another one. I'm out. Bye.